What is going on, everybody? Sean Daniel with Guitar Control here, and today is a very monumental, important day because you're going to learn how to play your absolute first guitar chord. So make sure you click the link below this video because it's going to give you a chart that we're going to teach you how to explain so you can kind of read guitar chords and remember stuff so you don't have to tax your memory more than you already have. Alright? So, right off the bat, what is a chord? First of all, you have to know the difference between a note and a chord, right? When you play a single note, whether it's an open string, like this low E string, the lowest string right here, that's a single note, okay? You can play notes all over the guitar by holding down different frets. Now, a chord is when you combine multiple notes at the same time. Now, it doesn't always matter that you have to hold down certain frets. Like, in fact, I can just play the D, G, and B strings together, and that's a chord right there, all right? I don't have to be fretting a note to have it count, all right? So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, but right off the bat, the very first chord that we're gonna learn, it's a really important one, is E minor chord, just like this, all right? And we're gonna kind of go over just a bunch of different things. And first of all, what we need to know is how many strings that we're gonna strum. This is a nice one because we're actually gonna strum all 6 strings, okay? I'm just gonna use my thumb, or maybe sometimes you'll see me use kind of like the back part of my nail to kind of act like a pick. Now, if you have a guitar pick and you're using that, that's cool, that's all fine. I do kind of recommend starting out with just using your hands because at first, a pick might just be one more thing you have to worry about, but if it's comfortable for you and it's working, just have at it, you know? Eventually, we're gonna get to all this stuff anyways. So, E minor, all right? We're gonna start by taking your middle finger and we're gonna hold down the 2nd fret on the A string, which some people will call this the 5th string because usually strings are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going from thinnest to thickest. But really, it's the 2nd string, if you're looking down at it, the A string right here, okay? So you gotta put your middle finger on the 2nd fret. And the perfect place to do this is kind of as close as you can get to that fret bar, that 2nd fret bar, without actually touching it. In fact, if you look at my finger, it might look like I'm touching the fret, but you might get a buzzing sound if that happens. It's actually the pressure on it is right behind the fret, okay? Now, there's kind of a compromise that you'll quickly realize because if you're not close to that fret, you might get it sounding like that, which, you know, it's buzz, it's not pleasant, but if you're first starting out, like you probably are, if you're watching a video on how to make your first chord, it's totally fine. It's really just kind of, it's a very helpful thing because it means there's something that you can kind of make a little bit better. So, to get the best tone out of a fret, you always want to put it as close to that fret bar without actually touching it. Now there's one more thing that we have to add to get to this chord, to make this chord shape, as it were. And that's gonna be using your 3rd finger, your ring finger, tucking it right behind your middle finger and grabbing the 2nd fret on the D string, otherwise known as the 4th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, D. The names of the strings are E, A, D, G, B, E, if you didn't already know that. Okay, so we've really got 2 fingers holding down 2 different strings on the same fret. Alright? And we want to get a good open sounding chord like this. It might very well not sound like that. It could sound something more like that when you're first starting out because you're really just kind of getting used to how you have to approach and attack these frets. And the way I like to think about it is coming down straight down as perpendicular as you can get to the fretboard. Kind of like if you can see my fingers right here, you can almost kind of see the indentations in the tips of your fingers. You kind of want to find the fleshy part on the tip of your finger because if you get too close to your nail, the string can actually slip in between your fingernail. That's a very uncomfortable thing you want to do. So it's about finding the perfect spot on your finger where you can come straight down and let the strings below and above it vibrate. One thing that everybody deals with when they're first starting out playing guitar is they'll put maybe like a finger down on a fret. So right now my ring finger is holding that 2nd fret on the D string, and that sounds really good, but the string right beneath it, that G string, isn't vibrating because I'm muting it with my ring finger, right? As soon as I take my ring finger off, I can hear it. As soon as I put it on there, it's muting it again. So you really want to get in the habit of coming straight down so all the other strings can vibrate around that one finger. Now, once you get into more advanced techniques, you might actually want to purposefully mute some of the strings, but right now we want all of the 6 strings to vibrate, okay? Very much easier said than done, by the way. If you're having a hard time with it, trust me, we've all been there. You're gonna get through it. It's gonna be awesome. You're gonna be rocking in no time. So we've got the 2nd fret on the A string and the 2nd fret on the D string, okay? Using your middle and your ring fingers. Now, it might be more comfortable for you at first to use your pointer finger and your middle finger to do that. That is a perfectly acceptable way to play the E minor chord. And this is something that I kind of wish someone would have explained to me when I was first starting out. It doesn't matter what fingers you use, except in the terms of context. And the reason why it's actually kind of important for us to be doing this is because you'll find that the chords that go along with this one chord might be a lot easier to get to if you use specific fingerings. Now that doesn't mean that if you play it with your pointer finger and your middle finger, it's wrong by any stretch of the imagination. That's totally fine. It's all about what chord you're going to next, what chord you're coming from, and that might actually help you kind of choose the right fingering to use for that particular chord. Now, I do want to also talk about how we're going to remember how to play this chord, because eventually you're going to learn a couple chord shapes, a couple different chords, and at first it's kind of daunting to maybe remember all the hand positions and stuff like that, but again, you're going to get it and it's going to be totally fine. So that link you clicked below to grab the chord chart is going to show you how to use that. So real quick, let's talk about what that chord chart is, okay? You'll see it's a box, and it has usually it'll have a name above it. In this case, E with a lowercase m. That lowercase m means minor. There are 2 main types of chords, major and minor, okay? If you see just an E and you know it's talking about a chord, it means E major. The major is implied. It's only if you have that little m that you know you're talking about an E minor chord, right? Any note can be a type of minor chord, like there's A minor, B minor, C minor, D minor, so on and so forth. So right above that chord chart, usually you'll be able to see what the name of the chord is. Now generally, the line on top of the box is going to be a little bit thicker of a black line, and that's representing the nut of the guitar. So that means you know it's right here. And there'll be 6 lines left to right, and those are going to be the 6 strings of the guitar. Now some fret boxes, some chord diagrams will differ with how many frets they show, the lines going left and right. How many of those? Sometimes there's 4 of them, sometimes there's 5 of them, sometimes I've actually even seen 6 of them. But really those are going to represent the frets, okay? So if you see a number on a chord box, like this one, there's a number 2 at the intersection of the 2nd fret and the A string. That number tells you which finger to use, okay? So when you see a 2 at that intersection, that means you take your 2nd finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, your middle finger, and you put it at the intersection of the 2nd fret and the A string, all right? Then the next one is a 3, so the 3 means your ring finger. Put it at the intersection of the 2nd fret and the D string, all right? Now, if you ever see an X over one of the lines going up and down, that means you shouldn't play that one. You try not to play that. Like for this E minor chord, you can get away with it just by playing the lowest 3 strings. You can get away with it just by playing the highest 3 strings. A couple different ways to play it. By no means is this the only way to play an E minor, which was another thing I wish someone would have explained to me, because there's not one way to play any chord. A chord is just a collection of different notes that sound good together. There are a lot of different ways that we can make a hand shape to make that E minor chord. This is just one way, and since it's your first guitar chord, it's one of the easier shapes to get into. So this is an E minor chord. It's not the E minor chord, which is why you can also use a different fingering to make that chord, even if it's different from the fingering that is displayed on the chord diagram, okay? Now, one of the other main reasons we're using this voicing is just like a different type of E minor chord. Kind of like I said, this is an E minor, and this is also a different type of E minor. These are 2 different voicings for the same chord. Okay? And again, don't even worry about that so much right now. We're just kind of getting started, but it's kind of good to know a little bit of the background of the terminology sometimes. So one of the reasons that we're using your 2nd finger and your 3rd finger, and we kind of have your pointer finger, which honestly might be your strongest finger and might be a finger that you really want to use to kind of help make this chord sound good, is because there are many other chords that require you to just make one alteration with your pointer finger. Case in point. I know we only said this is going to be your first guitar chord, but bonus, you're getting your 2nd guitar chord right now. An E major chord is the exact same thing as E minor, with one minor difference. One major difference, I guess, if you want to get all punny about it is that your pointer finger is gonna grab the first fret on the G string. So in the E minor chord, the G string was open. Now if you take your pointer finger and slap it down on that first fret, listen to the difference it makes. E minor, E major. It sounds kind of similar, but there's actually a pretty big difference considering we've only changed one out of those 6 strings. It changes the class of the chord. So this would be an E chord, otherwise known as an E major chord. Now the great thing about this is it's a shape, okay? So what I mean by a shape is you can use this hand shape that you just kind of trained, or you're working on training into your hand, whether it's minor or major, and move it around the fretboard to make different chords. Like for example, I can move this E major chord down a string, and it'll make a different chord. I use the same shape, but I put it in a different location. Thus, it's yielding a different chord. And we've got other videos on this stuff too if you want to get more into chord, chord memorization, chord building, chord theory. We got you covered. So you can move chord shapes down the neck, like, or you can move it down the string set. Both of them will give you varying degrees of good sounding chords or not. Sometimes it'll sound awful, right? That would not be a natural place to use that shape. But the beautiful thing about it is if you just strum the frets that you're holding down, then you have what's called a movable chord shape. So you can take this chord and move it all over the place, and it's always going to be a good sounding chord. Now they might not be good in relation to each other, but it's a valid chord that is going to help you memorize things in the long term, okay? But I really like starting with this E minor chord because it's something that I know that you'll be able to get down. Everybody is a little bit different. Everybody's fingers take a little bit of a different amount of time to kind of get smushed into that shape. One thing to maybe be cautious of is you might be actually holding it too hard. I've seen a lot of beginners when they're first starting out, they have like this death grip on the guitar and you can tell like their forearms are just like flexed, just like trying to like get it to sound better. It's honestly not as hard to hold the string down as you think. It's generally, sometimes it is, not all the time, it's generally not about the pressure that you're putting down, it's about the location that you're adding that pressure. So you really want to work on having those fingers come down as perpendicular to the fretboard as possible. Well, now, that doesn't mean you have to come straight down, but really try to get actually just like, especially from the first joint of your fingertip down, try to have that come down as straight as you can. However, you got to maneuver to get that. And another thing is often overlooked is the positioning of your thumb relative to your fingers. Like sometimes maybe you think you have to just like come under like this and just like slap them on here. You always want your thumb around the back of the guitar, and it'll be in a little bit of a different position depending on the guitar chord that you're using. But generally, think of the location of your thumb and how far off the palm of your hand is from the back of the neck to find the optimum position for you to be able to come straight down on those chords. Like if you see here, there's actually a good amount of space between the palm of my hand and the fretboard. If you're really closed in like this, the other parts of your hand are gonna be muting some of the strings. So one way to check if you're doing a good job is just to try to get that chord shape down and individually pick all 6 strings. That's a great way to kind of diagnose where like a problematic, oh, I can't hear that, so I gotta adjust this a little bit and kind of compromise to find the best way to play these chords. Again, totally daunting when you're first starting out. The first month or so of playing guitar is by far the hardest, but I promise you, if you stick with it, be thoughtful about it, hit up your boy Sean on Guitar Control's channel and ask him some questions. You're gonna get through it, and learning guitar is gonna be just really an enjoyable lifelong experience that you're gonna have. So I commend you on deciding to pick up a guitar and going to the internet waves to help you learn how to play your first guitar chord. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up. Thanks a lot. So if you've mastered that first guitar chord and you want to move on, you're in luck because we got a lot of other videos around here from myself and other great instructors on the Guitar Control channel, and we are definitely always looking for your feedback. So anything you like, didn't like, let us know, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks a lot for watching.